Alright, so I'm very aware that the last video I did on RWBY did insanely well, and don't get me wrong, I wasn't sure if I wanted to make another video on RWBY, because I didn't want it to be misconstrued as me simply milking the RWBY hate bandwagon for all it's worth. In fact, I think even calling it a hate bandwagon kind of does a huge disservice to what it actually is, as the majority of people making videos on RWBY's decline are people with legitimate complaints, grievances, and criticisms towards the show. I also have a lot of complaints, grievances, and criticisms in common with these people. Back when Volume 4 was close to its release, I watched the first 3 volumes of RWBY with a friend of mine and was pretty much instantly hooked on it. It was as if I'd been introduced to something that fit my tastes in animation and storytelling almost perfectly. It was the show that introduced me to anime as a whole. Then Volume 4 came out, and it was much worse than I realized back then. I made excuses for it because I didn't want it to ruin the 3 that had came before. Then Volume 5 came a year later, which was worse, and I kept making excuses. Then Volume 6 came, and it was like I was forcing myself to watch at that point. I dropped when I found out that they would bring back Penny in Volume 7, not for reasons of canonical impossibility, but because it felt cheap and as if they were simply pandering to the audience and bringing back a character from when the show was good. I dropped it around then and made that video, and I still will shamelessly throw myself at anything having to do with those first 3 seasons, despite the 4 consecutive dumpster fires that followed, because I love them that much. Basically, the reason I decided to come back to RWBY isn't because of the fact I got a load of views from it, but because since my video, I've given the show a lot more thought, and I've realized that Volume 4 is much, much worse than I realized back when I watched it the first few times. So let's get into this train wreck, shall we?
Let them sit for several weeks in a dark place, and then do it again.
It had been a very long time since I had seen the opening to Volume 4, and let me just say, upon watching it again, it was hilariously bad. The animation looks like something you would see in a Minecraft intro from 7 years ago. You may be saying in response, "But lelzer, they were only getting used to Maya. So why did you switch? By doing so, you already axed the art style RWBY was known for, but you're also butchering the animation RWBY was known for." Compare this to the openings of Volumes 2 and 3. The fast pace of those two are nowhere to be found in Volume 4's. The whole point of RWBY's animation is that it isn't slow. Anyway, let's just move on to the actual episodes.
Soy libre. Adios, mocoso.
We open on a shot of Grimm rising from pools of and Mercury and Emerald are horrified by the sight. But shouldn't they have seen this before? I mean, they work with Not Medusa and Evil Lady. Certainly they should have seen their evil lair. Anyway, Not Medusa assigns tasks to a cast of new villains. Dr. Watts is to meet with an informant in Mistral. Tyrion is to hunt down the Spring Maiden. And Hazel is to meet the leader of the White Fang. Whoa, wait, for what reason would the White Fang want anything to do with Salem, or even Cinder for that matter? An extremist group bent on fauna superiority at any cost wouldn't typically do dealings with the person who's creating the very thing that's hindering their progress as a species, unless under extreme pressure or being blackmailed, but that's not the case. As she said, Adam Taurus has proven loyal, which means he's on their side. Not Medusa, who's definitely not looking like somebody I've seen before, asks about the girl who Naruto'd her out of commission at the end of the previous season. Evil Lady then retasks Tyrion with taking down Ruby Rose instead. Tyrion makes a joke that makes Cinder mad and I didn't laugh at, and then we cut to someone. But first, what the fuck are these villains? You have the 3 from the previous volume, but now you have Evil Lady, who I can't seem to find any motivation or drive other than being evil. Tyrion, who's crazy. Dr. Watts, who's little more than a belligerent asshole. And Hazel is just a dude. He seems not to give a shit. Look at the first episode of Volume 1. Roman Torchwick is introduced robbing a dust store. This gives us a hint about his character. He's a crime boss that deals in dust. Right now, this is just a bunch of people sitting at a table being assholes to each other for 5 minutes straight. I know nothing about these people. Oh yeah, and about that someone I mentioned, he farms for a while. We then cut to Team in the forest arguing about what name their new team should have, despite it literally not mattering at all anymore when they successfully lure Grimm into an open area and they fight scene. It's fine, it's clear it's missing what the fights from the first 3 volumes had in terms of charm and character, but it does its job, and there's nothing particularly horrendous about it besides the fact that whenever one person attacks the big rock man, everyone else just seems to stand there and watch. I'd imagine their best bet would be to hit it with all they have. That being said, why does John not have a weapon? He makes a joke about it, but it's brushed off as if it's not a fundamental lapse in judgment on the part of everyone. You are marching through dense forest, full to the brim with creatures that would happily slaughter you without remorse. What fucking idiot would not bring any kind of weapon? Anyway, they decide the best course of action against the Rock Man is to knock out all of his limbs and go for the head. Seems fine enough. But then Ruby and Nora use a team attack on it, and it pretty much instantly dies. Why didn't you do that first? If your normal attacks aren't working, wouldn't a little more firepower be a possible solution? Anyway, they win, they get paid, John gets new armor, sword, and shield, made with parts of Pyrrha's. Good decision, tasteful, I like that. There's a joke that I would have found a little bit funny had it not gone on for a decade and the art style not been so distractingly awful, but we'll get to that later. They have some generic main character dialogue, and they set off to the next village. Cut to Weiss sitting at a window when Da Butler comes to tell her father wants to speak to her. Weiss walks down a bare and white hallway and is confronted by Satan, also known as Whitley Schnee. Two things. A, fuck this guy. Not because of anything he says or does, but because he reminds me of...
He's here. Who? The Batman.
B, this script is horrendous. The way they speak to each other, their body language, it's like I'm watching two cardboard boxes argue over a moldy slice of cheese. Anyway, they leave and we cut back to Ruby having some sort of nightmare or something involving flashbacks of sorts to what happened at Beacon. I see nothing wrong here. This could actually be some good potential for some character development on Ruby's part. We then cut to them walking as they do. There's jokes made about John that I actually quite like, but all of a sudden they discover a village that's been overrun by bandits. Problem. How did you not see this at least 30 seconds ago? You were on a relatively straight path. You were looking directly forward, and there's clearly smoke coming from one of the buildings going straight up into the sky. I find it kind of strange that you were able to look straight at the village and not notice there was something wrong. Regardless, they go in and help the survivors and discover a wounded huntsman who tells them the village was ransacked by bandits and then attacked by Grimm in all the panic. They can't help him and he dies before they do anything. Oh my fucking god. You decided to walk through miles of dense forest under threat of seemingly endless Grimm without anyone to act as a medic. Are you actually retarded? Do you not know how this works? This journey in itself was suicide to begin with, which I'll get to later. But you didn't even think to have a healer. But if you think that was stupid, you're gonna love this next stupid. A stupid so stupid, it's almost blinding. Ren and Nora find tracks from what is presumably a Grimm, only one footprint, whatever. Then we cut back to Weiss listening in on an argument between her father and Ironwood about a dust embargo. Oh boy. Her father, Jock, explains to her that Atlas is forbidding from exporting dust to other kingdoms as a precautionary measure until they're certain no one is going to declare war. What? What? It's pretty obvious that the attack on Beacon wasn't a military operation by another kingdom, as evident by the hordes of fucking Grimm swarming the place. It should be obvious to anyone with two functioning brain cells that this was a terror attack carried out by someone with, to some extent, control of the Grimm. Whoever it is that has control of the Grimm doesn't really need dust. Wouldn't it be a much better idea to speed up and increase the number of dust exports to other kingdoms so their militaries could be strapped and ready for whenever the next school gets attacked? By cutting off dust trade, you are literally increasing the chance of another Beacon. Why are you stupid now? Ironwood leaves, strangely broad shoulders and all, and Jock informs Weiss that they'll be holding a charity concert to show that the Schnee Dust Company is on the side of pretty much everyone, and that he wants Weiss to sing at it. White trailer. She begrudgingly accepts, leaves, and engages in banter with Da Butler. Cut to Ruby being woken up by the voice of Pyrrha. She goes to investigate this and sees John training with a video recorded by Pyrrha. Now I know this is a great moment, I enjoyed it, and I get why it's there, but in keeping with the theme of this video, I have to ruin it. So John is training along with a video of Pyrrha recorded in front of Beacon Tower. When and why did she make this? It would make a little sense for her to make it during the fall of Beacon before she died. It also sounds very right before she dies-esque. But at the same time, she didn't have any time to make it. The background is also relatively calm, so if this wasn't before she died, why did she record it? Would it not be leagues more efficient to just help him out yourself? Where did he get the video from? It doesn't seem to be a video he had from before because he reacts to Pyrrha's last statement as if he hasn't seen it at least before tonight. Why did a good emotional moment have to be a blatant ass pull? That's where the episode ends. I hope you loved the stupid in this one because there's even more in this next one.
The apple. What?
Ven y trata de golpearme si es que puedes.
We begin episode 3 with some dialogue between Useless 2 and a sea captain, which is so stilted it makes me want to impale my monitor. He leaves Useless 2 alone to brood, and she decides to take her bow off and throw it in some Mario Kart Wii-ass water. Cut to Useless 1, who's watching TV, and it's as if she's watching the RWBY fucking Onion. The first channel says that with no end in sight, local huntsmen and huntresses can't seem to get a hold of the situation at Beacon Academy. So send in the military! They don't need to be specially trained to fight Grimm. If there's a lot of them and they have big enough guns, they'll be able to overpower them. The most powerful among the Grimm is effectively dead. The attack on Beacon was a tantamount to a declaration of war, and nobody's fucking doing anything. What is happening in this world? The next channel says that the loss of the CCT tower at Beacon is continuing to prevent contact with the outside world. Alright, fuck me. You're telling me, without a shred of irony, in a world that is entirely aware of the Grimm, their attraction to fear, and the malevolent forces clawing at human civilization by the day, that fucking nobody thought that it might be a good idea to have multiple CCT towers just in case. Several even. Hell, you're at the point technologically where it wouldn't be too hard to get satellites out. Don't you think it's kind of a fucking stupid idea to keep your only source of communication with the world outside of Vale in a school occupied by mostly insufficiently trained children? Are you shitting me right now? The next says that the Vale Council voted that week to continue to ban any air traffic that does not have a direct correlation with evacuation. Whoa, okay, wait. Your wireless communication with other countries has been completely shot. Your main munitions outlet has been cut off. Don't you think it might be somewhat effective to, I don't know, have messengers sent by air to other kingdoms to, oh, I don't know, communicate with them? I am calm! Useless 1 turns off the TV, I like to think because she too is getting a headache from how stupid Vale's government and this show's writing are, and as she does so, Taeyang comes home with boxes. He puts one on the table and reveals it to be a prosthetic arm made specifically for Useless 1. How exactly Ironwood was able to obtain the proportions and details of Useless 1's right arm without her knowledge is beyond me, but I can look the other way. The TV is worse and there's way worse stupid coming very soon. Also, Taeyang looks like a Lego minifigure with a stick up his ass and it makes me uncomfortable. Useless 1 decides to not put it on quite yet, and later there's a scene where she has flashbacks to the events of Beacon. It's a good scene aside from the fact it's animated like complete garbage, but to be fair, that applies to the rest of the season. We cut from Useless 1 to Useless 2, who is still on the boat seemingly hours later. She has a run-in with Sheev Palpatine and then Dragon. The Dragon is noticed by the captain and crew and they prepare for battle. I can't take this fight seriously for two reasons. A, the Dragon looks like a Genji skin. B, the captain's dialogue in this scene, and pretty much every scene he's in, is about as uncomfortable as Taeyang's shoulders. It's clear they were going for your stereotypical sea captain, but instead, his tone of voice is one of a stereotypical sea captain, but what he's saying is like what Ozpin would be saying. Anyway, they're struggling against the Genji skin when all of a sudden Sheev Palpatine footstool jumps off of Useless 2's head, not crushing her head and or neck under his weight, and he reveals himself to actually not be Sheev Palpatine reincarnated, again. Instead, it's Sun, who has jumped onto the dragon and is now riding it. Useless 2 has a delayed, exaggerated, terribly animated reaction. The captain gives some video game-ass instructions, and the fight that ensues is fine. It's interrupted a few times by what should be comedy. It essentially boils down to Sun being an idiot and Useless 2 not being as much of an idiot. But wait a minute. Why are there a bunch of stacked rocks in the middle of the ocean? And how have they not been knocked over? It's not like they're on the ground, they're on water. And why are they in one mass like this and not just floating around indiscriminately or fucking sinking? It's made even worse when Useless 2 falls from the air and is caught by Sun, the impact causing visible damage to the rock around them. Rocks on water don't stay stationary after an impact like this. There's a funny slap joke that goes on too long. We cut to even later on the boat. Sun has the wrong idea as to what Useless 2's motivations are. She has another delayed, exaggerated reaction and tells him she wants to go home to sort some things out. Humor, and then back to Evil Lady and Not Medusa. Evil Lady asks Not Medusa if she had killed Ozpin at Beacon. Kind of a dumb question. Even if she didn't, you've won a major victory, and if he is dead, you must be aware of his ability to take over the bodies of unsuspecting farm boys. She also can't tell you because she can't say words. She does say a word, however, despite struggling to fucking exhale 3 seconds prior. Evil Lady tells the interrogation droid to reinforce their numbers at Beacon because there's a relic there. Oh, fuck me. We're not about to start some Final Fantasy MacGuffin shit on the 4th season, are we? There's one major thing I noticed while watching Volume 4, and it's this. It doesn't feel like I'm watching RWBY anymore. RWBY's fight scenes used to be energetic and fast-paced. Now they're slow, and whatever tension they're supposed to have falls flat on its face. The dialogue is stilted, and the humor, which used to play off tropes in anime, it's almost completely different, or falls flat because it's either dragged on too long, or when it's attempting to play off one or two characters, completely misinterprets those characters and gets it completely wrong. Hell, that's not even a problem solely in the humor. Take RWBY, for example. In the first 3 seasons, she was a lovable dork with an obsession for weapons, but through the music, you know, we knew there were things about her she didn't talk about. Volume 4 had an opportunity to have so much development for her relating to the events of Beacon, Pyrrha, Penny, her mom, but instead we got someone that wasn't Ruby Rose. Instead we got a generic main character who's way too happy-go-lucky for the situation she's in, takes every opportunity to have a generic main character speech, and has almost none of the quirks and traits we saw in RWBY. And while there are some characters that have stayed relatively the same, John is still enjoyable and Ren is still a cardboard box, ones like Ruby and Nora have been almost completely stripped of what made them likable to begin with. Now, this entire volume can be faulted for not knowing what its tone should be. It would have been completely fine if Volume 4 was another downer like Volume 3 was. Beacon just fell. Ozpin, Penny, and Pyrrha are dead. Useless One is without an arm. Weiss and Blake are away. Things are not going well, but instead of being a downer as it would have made sense being, it decided not to do that, take a get-out-of-jail-free card, and fast forward through an entire volume of development to get to a season that attempts to be hopeful and cheery. It's as if they forgot what happened episodes ago, not to mention the fact it completely throws out what should be common sense out the window in favor of contrived drama and fabricated stakes. It's not what RWBY used to be, it's not fun anymore, it doesn't make sense anymore, and the characters aren't the characters anymore. Part 2 coming soon.